Well, I did a whole recording and lost the audio. It's taking me a long time to learn how to use this headset microphone. I found out I had to go into the screencast software to engage the microphone. It had nothing to do with settings in the computer. It was the software settings I had to monkey with. So, I can't remember what I said. I'm gonna have... Good grief. Oh, and I had such a good one, too. It was a long video. Oh, well, let's see. What did I cover? Impedances. Oh, the whole point of this is to compare impedances between two different versions. Version 11, over here on the left, is the most recent development of my simulation of the Joseph Newman motor for maximum efficiency, because I included a neon bulb, I included a capacitor, the neon bulb, that's my idea, capacitor, that's Newman's idea, and then of course the base reference for gain in this is the spinning magnetic field of the spinning bar magnet, which Joseph Newman does not take into consideration. I think Dr. Hastings does, but I wasn't able to make out what he was saying. But in any case, it's over unity only in the sense that you're getting extra energy that you don't get from the battery pack, or else you wouldn't be able to get the battery current to go negative. And that was the way that Dr. Hastings explained it. But it's not over unity in a strict sense of the word. There's no such thing going on here. So I added more text to tell you what the impedances are on the three areas that would otherwise just be wattage. The wattage of the spinning magnetic field, I have its impedance. The wattage of the stationary coil, I have its impedance. And the wattage of the energy coming into the coil from the battery pack, both the volts and the amps, I also have its impedance. And so I did it on both files, and I'm going to upload them so that it'll be the same name at their online location. It'll just be updated versions of both the image, the graphic, as well as the ASC LT-SPICE file, because there's this extra text here. And also I changed the duration of version 11. I had it going for only 10 milliseconds, but now I have it going for a full second, just like version 13, so that we can compare them, because the values of the output changes over time. Newman's motor, both the outputs and the RPM change together. But in this stage of my development of this simulation, I have the rotation speed fixed from the very beginning, and so it's one less thing to change over time, and so it catches up fairly quickly. Whereas in Newman's case, it can take several minutes, it may even take an hour for all I know, of simulator time, which is a heck of a lot of time to wait for the thing to compute all the values before it traces out a narrow window of time so we can see the waveforms, the shapes of them. So I am going to look up today to see if I can find LT-SPICE modeling of a motor or a generator. And then I have to somehow vary the frequency here, the 100K frequency on this V3, and I have to vary the 10 microsecond duty cycle on S2 and S1, because I have them both at 10 microseconds to match the 100 kilohertz. But they're going to have to match using some other methodology, and they have to be tied exactly together in phase at the same frequency and move together with direct proportionality, 1-to-1. Well, I don't know about what, this isn't one, well, yeah, 1-to-1 proportionality, that's right. But how fast they move in relationship to, oh, I see, that answers my question. Right. Well, no. How they should be directly proportional to the change of the voltage on L1, the stationary coil voltage, that's a whole different story. You know, Newman claimed it was all about voltage regulated the RPM. Well, it may be the watts, I don't know, but he says it's the voltage, so fine, whatever. So they're going to have to vary together. And then initially they will have to be a fixed rate, a very, very slow RPM, similar to, you know, Newman hand pumping it with his hand to get the bar magnet going, rotating initially. So that could be done by a starter motor, you know. That might be the only part of the circuit that might have to be non-solid state is a starter motor. Well, no, not necessarily. That could be solid state as well. So what I'm also hoping for is to be able to develop a solid state variety. Wouldn't that be nice? The only problem is, why would I want a solid state version? Because the whole benefit to this circuit is mechanical rotary motion, kind of like a Bessemer wheel, a reincarnation of a Bessemer wheel. Because our motors are based on amperage, and that gives them speed and acceleration, whereas the Bessemer wheel and Newman's motor don't have the advantage of acceleration, you know, rapid acceleration, because they don't have the advantage of speed either. So they totally rely on torque. So what else? Trying to remember everything I covered. So I put in impedances, and I put in the voltage and the amperage of these rotating magnetic field as separate values over here to the right, because I never did that on the left-hand column. So now I got 5 more pieces of information in addition to the 6 on the left here. I got 5 more on the right. And that's to help us analyze. Otherwise, I didn't change these circuits except the left-hand circuit. I make it run longer before it starts to trace so that it's exactly the same length of time, 1 second, as is the right circuit before it starts its tracing within a narrow window of 200 microsecond time frame between the beginning and ending of the tracing here. What else? I made a long video. I wonder what information I put in it. I have a very short-term memory. Once I say it, it's gone. It's history. Oh, I remember now. The people at, the guys over at the board, the forum of straightdope.com, in which I started the message thread to provoke a response so I could get stimulated my thinking. They wanted, you know, like a lot of people, you know, build us and then we'll pay attention. Otherwise, we don't care what you simulate. Well, how am I supposed to build something if I don't spend a heck of a lot of time in advance designing it? And the simulator is the perfect way to draft a circuit, because I have no background, unlike them, you know. But see, their formal training won't be able to develop this. So they and I are both disabled because we don't know how to create a gainful circuit from scratch. We don't have that expertise. You know, we're not a John Bedini. We're not a Tesla. So all we can do is simulate and bumble around, and they have as much luck as I do bumbling around, but they don't even bother, because their formal training tells them from authoritative sources that the Newman motor is crap and Newman is a fraud. And they, you know, anyway. So I have to simulate to get us out of the box of our ignorance, our collective ignorance. So I have no choice. I have to simulate. They just don't get it, you know. If you want to do the work, how do you go about doing it? Well, they don't bother to do the work, so they don't bother to ask the question, well, how do I go about doing this? Well, I can't do it, so I'm not even going to bother. Okay. Kill the project before it starts. So they're coming from a different standpoint, yet they're peer pressure. And so I felt pressure to come up with something a little more realistic, so I came up with version 13 that actually has the necessary voltage of more than the voltage of the battery pack, 332 volts negative. So I went to the limit of 10% more than the battery pack voltage, because that's the safe limit when you want to recharge lead acid batteries, is you elevate your charging voltage a factor of 10% in addition to the battery voltage, but in the negative polarity. I could have done less, but I went up to 10%. And so version 11 does not claim to charge the batteries, it just claims not to spend anything off the batteries because it has a negative amperage, but its voltage of negative 49 volts is not adequate to overcome the 300 positive volts of the battery. It has to overcome those positive volts of the battery, because the battery is like a voltage regulator. And it's not that you have to fight it, you just have to neutralize it and then have a little bit in excess in order to be able to charge them. But there's no point to charge the batteries because we're not spending anything. The amps are negative anyway in both these cases. And so this motor keeps running so long as the batteries don't get old, but they will never get discharged. So this version 11 here runs more efficiently than version 13 anyway, and so I'm not going to develop version 13 any further. I'm just going to go back, revert back to version 11, and base any of my further developments off of version 11. But now I have impedances so I can more thoroughly analyze the situation and see what's going on. You know, it's just good to have more information, even if I can't figure out what to do with it, you know. But it should be interesting, you know. It's always good to have more information. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, I went over waveforms. I'm kind of fascinated that version 13 has to supply more energy to recharge the batteries, and so the current on the spinning magnetic field is significantly higher, and it's negative. It has to be to overcome the positive volts on the batteries. So the current on the spinning magnetic field for charging the batteries is negative 423 kiloamps, while when I don't bother to recharge the batteries, it's positive 5 kiloamps on the spinning magnetic field of the rotating bar magnet. So it's very interesting. That's one of the major differences. The other is that the wattage on the spinning magnetic field when I'm not trying to charge the batteries is a mere 8 watts, while when I'm trying to charge the batteries, it's nearly 31 kilowatts. Positive in both cases, because, you know, positive being it's oriented in reverse anyway, reverse direction. Even the coil is reversed direction, representing the spinning magnetic field. But when you read it out on the tracings, you know, the tracing doesn't know, so it just says, oh, it's positive, you know. I could have made it negative, but why, you know, it wouldn't make any sense. So I just kept it the way it is. It's positive polarity. Let's see what else. You know, I can't remember what else I said in the non-audio version. But see, now I know what to do. I might as well show you. I have to check each time. I have to look on this, either one of these two audio meters, to make sure I've got audio coming out. And that's really all I have to do, is to always make sure audio is coming out when I turn it on. Or even before I turn it on, actually, before I start recording. Just take a look at this before I reduce it and take it up, push it out of the way. Because if I don't keep checking, I don't know what I'm doing. This is all new software for me. Oh yeah, I thought the waveforms were interesting. So in this sense, in this case, when I'm charging the batteries successfully, I have sine waves really coming down here. It's all a question of, here's the rotor, the spinning magnet up here, and here's the battery pack down here, and here's everything else in the circuit in between. And so if you can get the sine waves to keep dropping down plot levels to go further and further down, then you know they're having a greater influence as compared to when this kind of a sawtooth square wave combination moves upwards. Then it shows that your batteries are predominating in the circuit, and here the sine waves gets chopped up. The only sine wave here is the voltage on the spinning magnetic field. That's the light blue tracing that's been overshadowed by the magenta tracing, covered over. Here, the voltage is a mesa wave, kind of a variation on a square wave. But the amps are very much like these three tracings underneath it. And here is when it starts to change. The amp starts to change more into a sine wave on the spinning magnet. But when we get to the wattage, blending these two waves together, it gets to this complex mix. And then I talked about other things about the spikes on the downward spikes on the, or the upward spikes on the impedance. They change as well depending on what we're doing. So I like looking at the shapes of the waves. It kind of tells me what's happening in general. You know, if I have spikes, which direction are they pointed, up or down, away from the battery pack or towards the battery pack? These waves, I call them teeth waves. They look like teeth to me. Molars, actually. Molar teeth. Side view of a molar. A whole row of them. Very big mouth. Yeah, like mine. Well, you gotta have a big mouth to generate lots of extra energy. Or is it the other way around? You gotta have extra energy to have a big mouth. Oh, okay, whatever. See, this is where we don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know, how do we get free energy? Or do we get the free energy and then, you know, and then we get the device that makes it? That's kind of true. Because from a yogi's standpoint, if you experience bliss, or even a non-yogi, just somebody, you know, who knows what bliss is, it's not joy. It's not the it's the transcendence of feeling. It's the recognition of the presence of God. But there's no joy there. Absolutely no joy. There's no nothing. There's no feeling. There's no thought. It's just a baseline of awareness that builds, but it never varies. It's solidarity with our general awareness of our five senses. It builds with reference to the five senses so that we have a greater and greater awareness of it, yet there's nothing there to be aware of. You know, you can't describe it because there's nothing to describe. But it does serve as a backdrop that makes it easier for the mind to function from a more cosmic level. And I must say, the way the corporations run our planet these days, it's really not in most people's best interest to have a cosmic mind, unless they keep it to themselves. You know, so I don't mind. You know, eating the silk protein has given me enough positivity and resilience that I don't care what people think anymore, you know. They can say whatever they like to because I can say whatever I like to, and so what, you know. Words come easily. Words come too easily. You know, direct experience is a whole nother matter. And that's what they wanted to convey to me over at that forum at straightdope.com, that, well, until you build it, we don't care what you say. We don't care what your simulator exhibits. Not until you build it. Except I don't think I'm going to share it with them. I don't think they deserve it if I ever do build it. You know, it's the whole point is to share knowledge. This is an age of knowledge. The Aquarian age is an age of knowledge. It's not an age of emotion. That was the Piscean age that's still, you know, dragging itself along, reaching its epitome with more and more emotion. And that's the problem. As the Piscean age is phasing out, it's still going to keep bumping up people's emotions, while the Aquarian age is just barely making headway. And so our transition into a thought-oriented existence is just miserly, you know, teeny-weenily is starting up. Because the way the ages work, the dispensations, you know, 2,000-year dispensations, astrological dispensations, is that it's not a sine wave. It's not a statistical, what do they call those waves? It's a sine wave with the peak in the middle and the troughs at either side. It's not like that. It's more like the peak is over to the right and the trough is over to the left. And it simply gets more and more intense as time goes on, and it would keep becoming more intense if it was not supplanted or replaced by the next Piscean astrological age, you know, 2,000 years plus or minus a few hundred. So we're going to see more and more emotion. And emotion is inversely related to the quality of thought. So the less quality of thought, tends to be more intense emotions. And vice versa. The less emotions, the more clear and the more sublime is the thought. So, you know, that's just the nature of the change between two ages. We got to live with it, you know. It's our karma to be living at this time when there is this changeover between two different ages and two different styles of thinking and acting and speaking and experiencing, feeling, intuiting, everything, you know. It just, across the board, it changes everything. Anyway, I'm looking for things to say. Obviously, I don't want to sign off. Well, hopefully there's some audio intact, and I think there is. Let's check. Yep, there's audio there. So we have audio. Thank goodness. Yeah, I just had to go in there and change the settings. That's all I had to do. I didn't have to monkey with Windows settings. It's just amazing. Device settings, But I didn't know where to look, you know? I think. Yeah, right. I didn't know where to look. Oh well. Maybe now I won't keep mucking up here and taping whole sessions of blank audio. Well, it's only happened recently. That's what I don't understand. Why it just started happening all of a sudden. You know, I don't know. Whatever. Us old people, we have a hard time with this new technology. Yeah, I know. We're doing the best we can. Trying to keep up with you young folk. Who seem to get it right away. No problems, just right away you get it.